Hi, Deepak. So let us discuss this research which we had conducted in April 2015, and let's see if this is still relevant. The research was on anxieties of field staff in MFIs. We all know anxieties at workplace is an important area of attention for HR departments globally. Excessive anxiety impacts productivity and causes attrition. At the same time, it also impacts mental health of employees. And anxiety actually moves from one employee to another. And it occurs in so many wide range of circumstances. And employees feel when employees feel that they don't have a support system to guide them through or help them overcome their anxieties, they feel even worse. Particularly in the MFI context, uh, their employees, MFI employees, experience a very high level of anxiety given the kind of work they do. They have very lengthy work hours. The workday typically starts at 7 a.m. in the morning and goes on until 7 p.m. in the evening. So it's at least a 12-hour workday that they have. No wonder then that the industry average of staff dropout uh, is close to 50-55%. So our interaction with MFI field staff indicates that they experience significant anxiety in their day-to-day work, which is one of the reasons for the staff dropouts. Uh, so today it is 19th of March 2019, and this research was conducted in 2015 April. So some time has passed, but Deepak, I'd like to ask you, do you think these issues still remain relevant today as they were then?
Particularly when you're talking about March typically is a high pressure month in all the years, and over the past 4 years we have not seen the pressure of work on the microfinance loan officers going down annually. Yeah, so this research remains relevant ever more in today's context, even 4 years down the line.
Great. So let's revisit what are the factors we had that had emerged from our research. The objective of our research was to find out factors which cause anxiety to the loan officers. For the purpose of meeting our objectives, we did FGDs. Uh, uh, we we had 444 respondents who were participants in our various trainings. We ran a questionnaire through them on a 5-point scale, which was a completely agree to completely disagree kind of scale. And we ran a factor analysis to determine what are the various key dimensions of anxiety that MFI staff experience. Um, so these are the triggers that we could identify. The first trigger was cannot get enough funds in the branches for disbursement. Application. Second one was applications are rejected during credit bureau checks. The third one was feel threat to life while carrying cash. The fourth one was threat of getting fake currency notes during collection. Fifth one was threat of loss of cash during transit. Sixth one was do not get adequate salary. Seventh, supervisors do not cooperate and discriminate. Eighth, clients too far away from the branches. And then ninth, do not get timely leave. So, Deepak, I'd like to have your opinion on the threat of loss of cash during transit, and then there's this other one, feel threat to life while carrying cash. Now that many MFIs have actually moved to more of a cashless system of operations, do you think this risk has or this anxiety would have, diminished, or do you think that it would still continue to be an important anxiety?
With cashless disbursement and increasing cashless collection, this anxiety definitely will be far lower down uh, in for the MFI loan officers. Now, most of them do not carry large amounts of cash. So, yeah, so if you look at the kind of pressures, they'll be feeling slightly different kind of triggers, but cash definitely is mostly out of the if you say top 10 reasons of anxiety, cash is definitely out of the top 10. But before that, I have a question about the geographical area and the size of the MFIs uh, where this research was carried out, and were there more MFI, more than one MFI, or a single MFI?
So this research was primarily conducted in North India, and the respondents were participants of our training. So I don't really remember how many MFIs we trained in that period, but I think it was more than one MFI.
Thanks.
So then some other triggers which we had identified: colleagues leave their jobs without informing. So this places additional pressure on people who have to take over. The 11th one is adequate information about job related rules is not given. 12th one is concerned about audit rating scores. 13th one is adequate information about company performance is not given. Before we move ahead, I'd just like to inform you that we identified these triggers on the basis of focus group discussions, and then we created a questionnaire on a 5-point Likert scale, and we collected data. So when we collected data, the respondents who were our training participants, they actually filled up a questionnaire. Uh, So we carried out a relative ranking of these anxieties based on average scores, and the average scores that were derived has been presented in this illustration. I think the most important ones related to CAS, then physical safety while carrying CAS, so 4.38, very high level of anxiety, almost very close to 5. Loss of cash in transit, and fake currency notes. So even before running a fact analysis, you could make out that cash used to be a factor which made MFI operational employees anxious. Uh, then we ran this fact analysis. It's a pretty standard technique which is used to identify common factors or dimensions in a given set of correlated variables. The findings were fairly interesting. So the variables or the triggers that grouped together were like this. Adequate information about company performance is not given. Supervisors do not cooperate and they discriminate. Adequate information about job related rules are not given. Colleagues leave their jobs without informing. They're concerned about audit ratings. Now these variables bunched together, and we called it uncertainty. So definitely uncertainty in the life of an operational employee makes him or her anxious. Then some other factors also emerged. So there is insufficient cash in branches for disbursement, and applications are rejected during credit bureau checks. These bunch together, and we call them bottlenecks in achieving targets. Do not get adequate salary, do not get timely leave, clients are too far from branches. These bunched together. So these were related to their working environment. We call it adverse working environment. Uh, so I guess those continue to remain relevant even today. Um, and we could also kind of, through discussions, subsequent discussions with MFI managers uh, and our own understanding, uh, we could identify certain consequences of anxiety for MFIs. Obviously, Loss of productivity, absenteeism, staff dropout, and dissatisfaction are the most important adverse consequence of staff anxiety. It also impacts mental health and leads could potentially lead to staff misbehavior with clients, and then also supervisor field staff displaying violent behavior, so fights between MFI staff themselves, and ultimately this does lead to loss of reputation for the MFI, and it can also lead to adverse regulatory actions. um, do you think, I mean, are there any recent examples where these factors might have played out, which was which was widely known, even covered by the press?
Mm. 2010 Andhra Pradesh crisis. That's not very recent, but uh, uh, my guess is that one of the key reasons why the staff were not behaving in an ideal manner was they were having too much targets, or they were facing too much stress and anxiety in their work profile, and that was one of the reasons why there were instances of staff misbehavior with the clients, and which led to a series of events which led to the Andhra Pradesh crisis. So that is one of the most prominent example of what staff anxiety can do, and that was uh, uh, of course complemented by inadequate controls and inadequate training system of the MFI. But definitely at the center of it would have been uh, staff anxiety about the staff anxiety about various issues they face in their work life. Yeah.
Right, and even, I mean, in during times of stress for MFIs, staff get extra stressed, and it might actually lead to a downward spiral. So even during demonetization, when repayments were not forthcoming, and there were issues regarding how to collect repayments, uh, there were a lot. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence regarding relationship between MFI clients and MFIs breaking down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we also kind of thought about what could MFIs do to reduce anxiety for the field staff. Uh, so obviously, to the extent possible, cash handling needs to be minimized. Uh, we need to reduce need for transfer of cash over large distances. We need to explore feasibility of doing cashless transactions. We need to develop step-by-step guidelines for staff to follow in case of robbery, theft. We need to educate the staff regarding these, and we need to obtain cash in transit insurance, and educate staff about this. I guess between 2015 and 2019, a lot of MFIs have actually moved towards doing cashless transactions, and uh, as connectivity and banking infrastructure improves even more, um, in the future, we should expect that this particular anxiety will reduce. So then the other thing was reduce uncertainties for the staff. Do not change policies frequently. Have clear channels of communication. Provide adequate training on policies and company performance. Supervisors should provide definite support to field staff in case of problems. Have an effective grievance redressal mechanism for the staff. Then also removing bottlenecks in achievement of targets. So sometimes staff are unable uh, to meet their targets because of other bottlenecks that might hamper them. For example, poor cash planning might lead to disbursement not taking place when the staff has spent a lot of time in performing due diligence, doing a GRT, CGT, and preparing clients for loans. And then on the day the loans are supposed to be disbursed, for some reason or the other, cash is not available, or money is not available, and disbursements can't take place. So these lead to frustrations, and uh, staff anxiety. And finally, improvement in work environment. To the extent possible, the work environment should be friendly to the staff, reasonable distance of field areas from branches, timely leave, and competitive salary. So this was our research, which was done in 2015. I guess many of these factors remain relevant even today. Deepak, any final thoughts before we conclude our discussions?
So we have discussed this earlier also. Many of these things needs to be done by the HR departments, and HR departments remain very weak in most of the MFIs. So how do you think the MFIs can really incorporate these suggestions, given that their HR and training functions remain very weak?
Yeah, I concur with you. MFIs need to actually define objectives for their HR. The HR function within an organization needs to have its own objectives, and how far are they able to achieve their objectives? So, my experience so far has been that the objectives for HR is hiring and managing, promotions, managing staff progression, but it does not include measurement of staff satisfaction, measurement of staff anxiety. What is it that drives staff to perform better? I think MFIs definitely need to improve on these areas. Uh, Secondly, MFIs need to improve the way they train their staff. This will take care of lack of awareness issues. Staff should have information available to them all the time. With advances in technology and proliferation of mobiles, I guess it's not difficult for staff to have all relevant operational information and knowledge that they need to perform their functions effectively in their hands all the time. So that would be my view. So great, it was nice revisiting this research after a fair uh, period of time. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thanks, Atul, for sharing this ever relevant piece of research. It was really very useful. Thank you.